Today I wanted to speak about every time I read a report, there's always something about China and how China has a problem with Tibet, how China has a problem with India, how it has problem with Japan, it has a ongoing problem with there's one country, I don't remember the name. Maybe when I remember it, I'll tell you. Forever, China is in the reports that it has a problem with this country over this country over this country over this. And I really can't understand what is going on with China. So, you know, I want to say certain things about China. If you didn't know what work I do, I'm a psychic and I'm also a tarot card reader and you know so I do a lot of psychic work. When I say I'm a psychic, I can draw a vision or I can get a vision on a person or an entity and or some situation or an event just to see how things are. But taking vision, even though is a is a doable thing, it has a lot of psychic pressure. So not something I do very regularly or frequently. I almost never seek any psychic visions, only because there's so much of psychic pressure involved. So whenever, now I will tell you something about China. The lot of times I read a report about China and then I do a tarot reading to see if there is a problem with intent, or you know are they doing it just to fight, or what is the problem. And surprisingly, every time I get the answer, there is no problem with the intention, there is no maligned or a bad interest. But whatever that they are doing is so bad that for me to believe the tarot reading is very difficult, that there is no malign interest or bad faith at work. So with lot of effort and lot of thought, I have decided to understand how does China think as a country, or as a set of ministers or people. How do they think that they're forever in a conflict, or doing something the most wrong, as a conduct. Now I will share some examples here. you know Once I was traveling and I met a Japanese person, girl, I think. And when I met this Japanese girl, that time, every other day there was a report about China and Japan being in conflict about a certain waterway or a certain part of the ocean, you know, was in the conflict. And I didn't understand what this conflict was. Despite reading the reports, it was just too much to read. So I asked this girl who was from Japan. I said, there is this lot of news about how China and Japan have some conflict and there is some problem. And I said, what is possibly the problem? What is the reason for the conflict between China and Japan and this waterway? First, she said, "Oh, this is all politics, this, that." And I told her, if you can just tell me little bit, I don't want to know year by year what happened or how things deteriorated. I said, if you can just tell me in just, what is the problem? So she says, long, long back, maybe some 2, 3 decades back, or maybe 4, 5 decades back, China requested Japan if they can use the waterway for its vessels to pass through. And because everybody works with the kindness and goodness in the heart, and everybody wants to keep it very positive and warm with their neighbors, and there is nothing to it. If someone says, can we, can you allow our ship to pass through a waterway, there is nothing to it. Every other country working with the good intent would say, yes, you can. So she said Japan had saw no problem with it when China requested if it can send its vessels through this waterway. She said like this, then they kept sending the vessels, or the ships kept passing by from that ocean line or that waterway, and it kept on going for decades and decades on, till one point China started to behave in a bossy way and started to give trouble to Japanese vessels passing from the ocean way. And when they raised this complaint with China, China said, but this waterway belongs to us. Too much to the surprise of the Japanese administration. She said, because we, Japanese, had given the access to the waterway or let the Chinese ship pass through our waterway out of lot of goodness in the heart, and as if there's nothing to it. And she said, after you using this waterway for 30-40 years or 20-30 years, China started to behave as if it is their waterway and there shouldn't be Japanese ships coming and going as freely. She said that is when the conflict started, and she said now China is claiming this waterway is theirs. One, I want to tell something to China, that even when you are a $1 trillion economy, or you're one of the very richest of economies in the world, and you're possibly one of the richest nations in the world and a very well-to-do country, your mindset is that of a slum dweller. You know, people from very good backgrounds don't do this. And somehow, either the Chinese strategists or administrators have had a decline in their mindset to the point that they now think like a slum dweller. I have in India, I'm increasingly seeing a slum population, and they do exactly this kind of nonsense when you deal with them. If you are nice to them and you give them a certain access, the next thing is they start laying claim to it and start saying it is theirs. They come from such impoverished backgrounds, the slum dwellers in India, that whatever they can grab or lie and grasp and just take it, they will do it. That is why in India, we should reduce the slum dwelling population. And China should work on their mindset. And if you are a well to do country, your conduct should also be well to do. And we should be very generous and good. You can't behave like a somebody who's amazingly rich country but has a mindset of a slum dweller. How can you abuse the kindness shown to you by another country? This is one. The second is China is forever fighting over some borderline with India. And see, India has its issues. I keep talking about how Hindus are, how Sikh people are, how Muslim people are, and how mostly Hindus are wrong. I keep talking about that if you were to check all my vlogs. But Chinese are even more wrong. We have our set of issues in India to deal with. But who keeps unnecessarily just keeps poking and fighting? It's almost like you don't like peace and calm. If you were to just observe localities, a slum locality, a middle class society, and an upper class society, and you were just to stand in the neighborhood or in the middle of the street of a slum, of a middle class, and of a upper class, you will immediately, with your eyes closed, you will be able to tell which neighborhood you are in. The slum dwelling neighborhood will have lot of noise, lot of people talking, and within nanoseconds you will have people passing comments on you, somebody pushing you, and some nonsense like that. If you were standing somewhere in the middle class, it will take you some time to be disturbed or to hear some noise. And if you were to go in upper class, mostly you will see silence or someone just coming and asking you if you need any help. People are nicer. When you have more money, people tend to become nicer and good and helpful. And if you had all the money in the world and you still keep poking and fighting all the time, you have a mindset of a slum dweller. This is the second example of how I read Chinese administrators' mind. You know, when I do tarot dealings, I always see there is no bad intent that China has. I have done 2 3 readings on just to check if Chinese intent was wrong in a certain decision making, even when it was, some sports event or something. And every time I get the answer that intent is not wrong, which means you're not working with the bad intent, but just with the bad mindset, a low quality mindset where you're forever just fighting over a certain territory or a boundary or an area with India, and so with so many other countries. This is mine, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine. You know, the easiest way to never be able to revive yourself from being a poor, homeless, slum driven life. If someone is living that life of being poor, homeless, and slum driven life, the easiest way to never come out of that life is to keep asking and fighting for everything. To keep fighting for, let's say, if some chocolates got distributed in the morning and somehow you missed it because you were sleeping or you were gone somewhere. And when you come back, if you start fighting for that chocolate, then you start fighting for bottle of water that got distributed. You start fighting for some announcement that got made or some music concert that was happening and you did not get a seat to sit, or you missed out on some freebie like a chewing gum. When someone keeps fighting and arguing over everything, pretty much everything that they did not get, it's almost like kissing a life of slums or wanting to become a homeless person. And if you're already a homeless and a slum life person, you'll never be able to get out of it. Because in your life, everything is important and worth fighting for. The day you decide this is not worth fighting for, a chewing gum is not worth fighting for, even if it is given free to all the slum dwellers and you don't get it as a slum dweller, you should know it's not worth fighting for. You should know a bottle of water is not worth fighting for. If you didn't get a seat to sit on in a musical concert and if you had to stand and watch, it shouldn't have mattered to you. The more things you learn are okay to deal with or cope with and are not materially damaging you, the faster you will get out of a bad and a poor life. This is what I'm telling you of how I understand a mindset and how I know how poor people will keep staying poor. So, a slum dweller doesn't know this and keeps fighting for everything. So, if you were to distribute let's say there are 20 homes with 5 people each in the house, and there are 100 people, and if you were to distribute only, let's say, 95 chewing gums and you don't get 5, and 5 people don't get it, and those all 5 start fighting, or if you give only 60 chewing gums and 40 people start fighting, you already know this is a slum class which is not making any progress or not making any learning what to fight for, what to not fight for. So they pretty much fight for everything. And this is the problem with China. They're forever fighting for everything. The latest is they have laid a claim on Congo's germanium mine, and forcibly they are just occupying it. One, no matter who you are, you should never take anything by force. This is called having a certain threshold about your existence. If you had to snatch and take it, fleece and steal it, it doesn't matter then how rich a country you are or your administrators are, because you're actually living a slum life. Only slum dwellers will snatch, grab, fleece because they're so poor, and they enjoy fighting because that's the only entertainment they have. So, very sadly, I have to say that while China doesn't work with the bad intent, I've just guessed your mindset. You work with the mindset of a slum dweller. You're forever fighting, arguing, and are at conflict with just pretty much everything and everybody. And it's not a problem of intent, it's a problem of mindset. You need to think and rise above petty fights, fighting over everything, not understanding people's kindness, and forcibly taking and grabbing things or extracting too much. Your loan terms are so punishing. Almost every other country that takes a loan from China goes into debt. It's like you don't wish people well. If you want to know who I am, you should check my spiritual titles in the description box. And someone needs to show the mirror and give China a eye opener. And I've decided to. That's the reason I decided to do this talk.